For every mistake made, a dozen things have been done correctly. Bob is feeling more confident of himself. He seems to remember that it is correct to use his knife for cutting lettuce or tomato if they are served in pieces that are too big for a proper bite. What do you think? Is he wrong or is he right? But the person with confidence isn't necessarily the person who is correct. Up until this minute, Betty has been confident that a person should butter his vegetables with his knife. But now that Betty sees Floyd buttering his with his fork, she isn't certain. She wishes she did know definitely. It seems safer to follow Floyd's example. If he is correct, then she will be too. Bob is swinging from one extreme to another. One minute he is uneasy, the next overconfident. Now he is forgetting even his company manners and is acting as he usually does in telling one of his favorite stories. Dorothea and Floyd give him their attention when he is looking at them, but at the same time they manage to continue eating while their food is warm. Bob isn't letting the story interfere with his eating either. So let's try counting the number of obvious blunders. The waving of his knife and fork about. Talking with food in his mouth. Monopolizing the conversation. But it is an exciting story. It's about a trip up in the mountains, and then, uh-oh. This isn't the kind of an ending to the story that Bob had in mind, but it is quicker and maybe better. At least it stopped Bob from making any more mistakes. Betty, too, has discovered that she had forgotten a couple of items of behavior. She is thinking that perhaps she and Bob both need to be embarrassed a bit to make them admit that their manners aren't as good as they should be. Bob may be thinking the same thing, because he certainly looks as if he has decided to make a lot of changes. The others, of course, say nothing. Betty decides that the first thing for her to do is to regain her poise. Just act as though no errors had been made. But she will be more observing of her own manners and those of others, too. Betty feels safe in her way of eating a roll and jelly. Is there anything in what Bernie and Helen are doing that would get your attention right away? Was there anything in the way he helped himself to more jelly? How about the way he holds his knife and fork? Or the way he cuts his meat? And takes it to his mouth with his left hand. When you are eating meat, do you take the meat to your mouth with the fork in your right hand or your left? Is there a question of correctness here? Helen is also using her left hand. Betty holds the fork in her left hand while cutting the meat, and then passes the fork to her right hand for placing it in her mouth. This is zigzag eating. She has noticed that the British and continental people usually use their left hands. But now that she is beginning to take her manners seriously, she wonders if there is a matter of correctness involved, or whether both ways are equally correct. One way American, the other European. Betty wishes she were as certain of that point as she is of how her knife should be placed. Bob has never heard of zigzag or continental ways of eating meat, but he is on the watch out for such things now. And as soon as he notices what Betty is doing, he is ready to follow her example, whether she is right or wrong. He uses his left hand all right, even if he does take an oversized bite. Bob congratulates himself on trying a new way. He and Betty have a lot to learn. At least there are no further mishaps as the meat course is finished and the table cleared for dessert. Bob is happy now and is proud of himself. Formal parties like this are really enjoyable when one isn't afraid of doing the wrong thing. Bob has reached the point where he feels that since his intentions are good and he is watching himself, that all is well. If you just try to figure out what is the reason for each rule of etiquette, you find that the rules are sensible. After all, correct manners are simply the way one person shows his consideration for another. In other words, proper manners are your way of showing common politeness. As far as Bob is concerned, this is the best birthday he has ever had. And to top it off, a big birthday cake that Betty had made for him. He really appreciates this. For the cake is a symbol, like the whole dinner, of friendship. A very delicious symbol of the regard that Betty and her friends hold for Bob, particularly Betty. The lighting of the birthday cake with candles is an old custom, and so is the blowing out of the candles. But do you suppose the placing of the candles at the side is a modern touch of avoiding possible germs being blown on the cake? Serving the meat course upset Bob. Apparently serving the cake has its difficulties too. Our hostess isn't certain that she should be helping Bob. She worried about leaving the table to bring in the cake in the first place. Betty wondered if the serving should be left to the housekeeper. What would you say? There is no denying that Bob needs help. He is having trouble with the serving implements again. Do you think he might be able to figure out from the shape and the size of the blades which to use? Cutting and serving your own birthday cake would seem to be a pleasure, but could you actually do this any more gracefully than Bob is? Betty's help may not be as great as she thinks. What of her reaching in front of Bob, and about her placing the dessert forks? Are these correct? Bob accompanies Betty to her place, assisting her with her chair before resuming his serving. He is at least trying to change his habits. And you notice, he forgot his napkin and sat on it. He is serving smoothly now and is not distracting his friends with his difficulties. They are free again to chat as they wish. And once again, the party is fun. Bob and Betty met more problems than they expected. As we are seeing, people like Betty and Bob, who want to entertain their friends and have good times together, forget that poor manners can really interfere with the fun of the party. There is no fun in being worried, unsure, or ill at ease. It is much simpler in the long run to face your problems, find out what the correct answer is, and then when you act in a way that you know for certain is correct, your mind is perfectly free. Of course, all this isn't accomplished just by wishing. There are still habits that have first to be detected and then broken. This is hard. Then new habits have to be formed. But a little study of etiquette will help greatly, and lessons are all practical. Once you have formed correct habits in your manners, you will find that they give you a sense of confidence. That is a reward in itself. Our party is ending, but let's hope that for you it is, in another sense, just a beginning. As you think of Betty and Bob and their problems, compare your own manners. Don't forget that it is by their manners that polite people the world around show their consideration for one another. A dinner party is just one way of enjoying company of your friends. A good meal, good company, real enjoyment, that's what a dinner party is for.